But you hear this from women like, I didn't store body fat in my belly ever, and all of a sudden, I'm getting belly fat.
A lot of it has to do with levels of estrogen. You're raising blood sugar levels. You start to increase fat stores. The higher the fat stores of adipose tissue, more elevated levels of estrogen. That elevated level of estrogen is going to then cause you to store more body fat as well. So then it's a vicious cycle. So in women, we see a lot of estrogen dominance. What happens is when women have higher levels of cortisol, their progesterone levels start to decline. It can lead to infertility. It can lead to lower mood, lower energy, bloating, water retention, a lot of estrogen-based symptoms. But we run their labs, estrogen looks totally normal. The problem is progesterone is low, so they feel like they have high levels of estrogen. For men, what do we see? We see a decline in DHEA and testosterone. Sleep will change your testosterone faster than almost anything.
Yeah.
Probably the fastest way that you will begin to age is high elevated evening cortisol. Cortisol needs to be made. It will steal from testosterone. It will steal from progesterone. It will take from DHEA.
That is the reason why testosterone go lower in somebody who's really stressed out then? Is that what's happening?
9 out of 10 times. Yeah. It's chronic stress in the body. Right. It's oxidative stress and chronic stress that ultimately wears. Now, could be gut health issues, could be heavy metals, could be viral based. So your blood work should always be done first thing in the morning. I think it is the best time to do it. Overall, you get the best numbers that you want to look at. However, you don't get your best cortisol because almost everyone's cortisol between 8 and 10 in the morning is totally normal. But the problem is it normal the rest of the day? Does it actually start to decline at night? And then what does that look like the next day for testosterone and DHEA, et cetera?
Dr. Cabral, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here as always. Thanks for having me.
Always fun, always revealing.
Always excited and nervous at the same time.
Yeah, that's
putting out all our laundry.
Whenever you're waiting for lab results, that's always the way that is. You hope that they're going to be good. You anticipate they will be, but there's always the chance. Right?
You also provide great shit talking between the three of us for the next couple months till we see you again. So
that's good.
Always a good time.
True.
So today we're going to talk about hormones, essentially.
Yes.
Hormone optimization. That's the test we all did. But I wanted to kind of connect it to your circadian rhythm, your sleep, and what's the connection between those?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I always look for in terms of people's hormones is not one single number, but what does it look like in terms of balance? So we as humans, and I've kind of shared this before, but this is really important, we are diphasic beings. So we're really meant to be on the go from 6 to 8 a.m. in the morning. And then that starts to really decline mid-afternoon to evening when we want to start to go into cool down mode. That cool down mode is some of the hormones that we're going to be talking about. So today I want to talk about what are the hormones of the morning to optimize, and then what are ones at evening, because how this works is that ultimately the health of you take through your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond is what allows you also to live to 80, 90 plus with the ability to actually still be able to use your body and enjoy quality of life. So it's a balance between cortisol, the catabolic hormone, as well as the sex hormones like testosterone, and even estrogen, progesterone, DHEA that we'll talk about today.
Okay. And is that why the test we did required us to test ourselves throughout the day versus the standard blood test? It's once a day, type of deal.
Exactly.
Because I could see how that was kind of a snapshot. Whereas what you're trying to do is look at the whole day. And you mentioned cortisol. I'm familiar with that's supposed to be high in the morning, low in the evening. When it's flipped, people have terrible sleep and they don't feel so good.
It's probably the fastest way that you will begin to age is high elevated evening cortisol. So that's one of the most important numbers you could run. We do a test that's just bedtime cortisol. Like it's that's important to understand that one number. But here's the issue. When you run your blood work with your doctor or you run it on your own, that you should do. Like I'm a big believer in annual blood work, and for myself, I do it semi-annually. But you're only getting one snapshot in time then as well. And you want it to be between 8 and 10 in the morning so that you get proper lipid profiles and proper thyroid levels. So your blood work should always be done first thing in the morning. I think it is the best time to do it. Overall, you get the best numbers that you want to look at, and it should be fasted as well. However, you don't get your best cortisol because almost everyone's cortisol between 8 and 10 in the morning is totally normal. Like almost less than 1 out of 10. But the problem is it normal the rest of the day? Does it actually start to decline at night? And then what does that look like the next day for testosterone and DHEA, et cetera? Because when the labs that we look at, we also look at the symptomatology, like what you're actually feeling. And so as people begin to get older, their strong levels of testosterone or DHEA can no longer compensate for their elevated levels of cortisol. So when you're young, you can have high cortisol all day long because you're also high DHEA, which is great for the immune system, and high testosterone, which is amazing for your libido, your ambition, your drive, your strength, and your recovery. So you can do that when you're younger, but as you start to get to mid to later 30s, depends on how much stress you've dealt with over your life. Also, genetics matter as well. You start to see that decline. That's why when people talk about 40 to 50 years old, there's a window within that people, if they haven't been doing the work or they don't start to do the work, will start to accelerate the aging-based process.
Let's talk about what does cortisol do then? So it's catabolic, releases energy. How does it make you feel? What is the function of cortisol? Because you need it.
Yes.
We always hear it as this bad thing. Lower cortisol, it's bad for you. It's too much cortisol causes visceral body fat, et cetera, et cetera. But it's an essential hormone. We need it because having no cortisol would be terrible as well, right?
100%. So Hans Seeley did some amazing research on this. When we look at the different stages of dysfunctional cortisol, well, one of the first stages is called the alarm stage, and it's actually elevated cortisol throughout the entire day. So you run someone's lab that we're going to look at here today, simple saliva samples. Why run saliva? Saliva is showing you free what's available in the body. So free hormone, free testosterone, free DHEA, or we use DHEA sulfate, which is a really good proxy for DHEA over the course of the whole day. It's the average when you use the DHEAS. And then cortisol. So if we do upon waking, when it should be at but it should be elevated, but not high, meaning it should be between 6 and 9 for a number. And then we look at lunch, we look at right before bed, and we look at before dinner and then right before bed. So you look at a total cortisol picture, and your total unit should be between a 9 and a 13 for the whole day. You might see someone at a 26, a 30. They're producing massive amounts of cortisol throughout the entire day. Now, in the beginning, they feel fantastic. It works as an anti-inflammatory. It gives you energy, increases heart rate. You start to lose weight. It's all of those things. Well, what happens when it becomes chronic? When you become chronically stressed? Okay, the morning levels can no longer keep up because your sleep becomes really poor at night. If you were to track your sleep with a Whoop or an Oura or Apple Watch, whatever it might be, you'll see lower levels of deep sleep and then typically later lower levels of REM. Deep repairs the body, REM essentially repairs the mind. And when those levels when your restorative sleep isn't there, cortisol doesn't rise in the same way. Neither does thyroid in the morning. So thyroid starts to get going around 3 a.m., cortisol around 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., somewhere right around there. Those levels stay a little lower. However, as you then start to move caffeine or other stimulants into your day, what happens is cortisol levels then rise later in the day, still affecting sleep, but now you're more tired and wired. And I'm sure you guys have heard that before. Where you can't fall asleep, you can't turn off your mind at night. So you start to use different things to turn off the mind at night, but you never get going first thing in the morning. So cortisol is amazing as an anti-inflammatory. It is great to get the energy going in the body, but too much of it begins to burn the body out and you become more catabolic rather than anabolic. So really difficult to start to put on muscle or recover from workouts. It's extremely important to have that. Your libido goes down, your ambition goes down, your drive goes down, and you just feel overwhelmed. You feel irritable.
Now, I always love talking to you because you do thousands and thousands of labs on people. So you have this great, test group basically to look at. What are some of the things that are most common that you see when you take this specific lab? What do you see that are most common? What happens?
So in women, we see a lot of estrogen dominance. So that means that women have a menstrual cycle that the first part of their cycle is typically denoted by higher levels of estrogen. And then once you get to around days 17, 18, 19, progesterone is going to start to increase. And then that's called the luteal phase, so follicular phase, luteal phase. What happens is when women have exposed to a lot of levels or higher levels of cortisol, their progesterone levels start to decline. It can lead to infertility. It can lead to lower mood, lower energy, bloating, water retention, a lot of estrogen-based symptoms. But we run their labs, estrogen looks totally normal. The problem is progesterone is low.
It's too low.
So they feel like they have high levels of estrogen, but estrogen is totally normal.
Anxiety too, right? It's a common one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you'll know if this is affecting you, even without running a lab, if it's happening about 5 to 7 days before a woman gets her cycle. For men, what do we see? We see a decline in DHEA and testosterone. So we have normal levels, like levels for free testosterone. When you're below 22 years old, you want that 140 to 160 for free testosterone. Once you start to get into your 30s, 120 to 140. We like to keep people on the higher end of optimal. Once you get to about 40, I like it around 100 to 110 minimum. It can still be higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today's program giveaway is MAPS Anabolic. If you want to win that, leave us a comment below this video in the first 24 hours that we drop it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. If you win, we'll let you know in the comment section. We also have a sale this month. MAPS Hit and the Extreme Fitness Bundle, half off. Go to mapsfitnessproducts.com and use the code April50 for the discount. Back to the show.
We go down about 10 points per decade. So we never get that low if you're just looking at like what's normal, healthy. But then we can make the argument, and I don't know if you want to get into this now, but like, is that optimal or is that just acceptable, right? And because there's going to be a point in your life, and it's usually between 55 and 65, and it depends on the individual. It depends if they're weight training. It depends if they're eating well, like if they're keeping themselves in shape, if they're doing all the things. They can maybe push it off till 65, I've seen. Because before I really got into integrative health and functional medicine, all these lab testing, like you guys, I was a personal trainer from 1996, on, and nutrition. Like I got to see this with my clients. No matter who the guy was, once he got to his mid-60s, it was difficult for them to be able to put on muscle and even maintain that muscle and not put on belly fat. Like it was just more challenging for them. And obviously with recovery as well. So what I say to guys is that we can push this as long as we can, but around mid-50s to mid-60s, you're probably going to start to become more catabolic than anabolic. And you're going to start to feel the effects of the lower anabolic hormones, the androgens like testosterone, namely, and DHEA, which gets overlooked. It's really important for the immune system and overall anti-aging, cancer, tumor suppression, a lot of that. And we start to see cortisol, though, stay normal. So if cortisol stays normal and testosterone drops, well, we've got a more catabolic situation.
So you're talking about the balance. You mentioned estrogen, progesterone, testosterone to cortisol.
Yes.
There's a ratio or a balance of them that is as important as just the levels themselves.
Absolutely correct. Because as you know, there's genetic variability, right? Some men have higher levels of testosterone than others, but the cortisol levels then should match that. So if you have a little bit elevated levels of cortisol, you need higher levels of testosterone and DHEA. So let me go back to DHEA just for a second. DHEA is the signal if it's chronic stress or not. So if your DHEA drops below, we typically say at 10, but 6 is our lowest number, we know that you've been chronically stressed for some time. So that's our first proxy there. And then if we catch it just like when you're at 9 or 8, testosterone's still normal, we test you a year later, but you haven't done anything different, and now DHEA is a 5, and we see your testosterone start to fall, then we know what's coming next. Over the next year or two, your testosterone is going to plummet.
Right. And DHEA, so what's the role of that? Because I know it gets converted into other hormones. I've heard it being referred to as like a parent hormone or something like that, right? Yeah. It can get turned into, it was androstenedione, testosterone, even into estrogen. Is that all it does? Obviously not, right? It's got its own functions.
Yeah, it's you're right. So the steroid hormone pathway, you're basically moving from cholesterol to pregnenolone, and then you move right to dihydroepiandrosterone, which is DHEA. So DHEA then can flow to any other part of the hormone pathway. So it can move actually from DHEA to fulfill progesterone cortisol pathway, or it can move down to, as you were saying, androstenedione, androstenediol, testosterone, which can then flow to estradiol, estrone, and estriol. So it is that parent hormone. I mean, I would say that it's a pro-hormone. It's a precursor to the other sex hormones, but it balances both sides. Okay. So it balances the sex hormones, but it also, if cortisol needs to be made, it will steal from testosterone, it will steal from progesterone, it will take from DHEA. And so DHEA is the balancer
so
of
that is the reason why testosterone go lower in somebody who's really stressed out then? Is that what's happening?
9 out of 10 times.
Oh, interesting. I never knew that's why. Okay.
So chronic stress. Now, you can say, well, it's more complicated than that. It has to do with poor sleep and nutrition. All of that is true. Yeah. It's chronic stress on the body. Right. It's oxidative stress and chronic stress that ultimately wears. Now, could be gut health issues, could be heavy metals, could be viral based. If you look at the data during COVID and other viruses, it crushes testosterone and sex hormones, destroys it. And the reason is that your body is so inflamed, and inflammation in general is going to lower sex hormones.
Yeah. So if DHEA gets turned into these hormones and somebody goes and gets hormone replacement therapy, because I've seen oftentimes people will get on hormone replacement therapy looking for the end stage hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone.
Yes.
But they'll still get recommended DHEA. Why is that? Is it because it has its own function? Like you need that as well, not just because it gets turned into other hormones?
Yeah, I'm actually a supporter of that. So men who are using TRT, or even women that are using maybe estrogen or anything else, I do recommend supplementing with DHEA.
Okay.
And the reason is DHEA may not be being made like it should be if you're satisfying all of the hormones that come after it.
Okay.
So your body's not like, well, how much more hormone do you really need when it's being satisfied? Like you don't need to make your own testosterone. If the exogenous hormone that you're putting in is greater than the endogenous production, you'll stop making it in most cases. Now, you can use certain pharmaceuticals as well to try to keep your testosterone going. But ultimately, after a long enough period of time, it's probably going to start to go down.
Do you see resistance to cortisol like you might? Because I know you can see, receptors downregulate for some hormones. Of course, there's insulin resistance. Can somebody develop cortisol resistance where the cortisol stays elevated? It's not affecting them, so it has to keep going up until it crashes?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually, so it's rare, but it is possible.
Wow.
So we have concussions. Is it CTS?
CTE.
CTE. Okay, couldn't recall that right now. We see
CTE. Remember that?
Ironically, the guy I remember.
suprachiasmatic limbic part of the brain. So basically, inside of the hypothalamus regulates day and night. And a lot of people who have had brain-based trauma or emotional-based trauma stay stuck in. It's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis that we've spoken about before. But it is what regulates with ACH and ACTH the amount of cortisol you produce, as well as epinephrine. So if your body thinks it is permanently stuck in a state of fight or flight from a concussion, from sports, and so a lot of people just say, well, it's from football. Soccer is one of the highest sports with concussions and CTE. It's unbelievable.
Also, jet skiing, I've heard too.
Is that because of the bouncing up and down? Or that's crazy. But true. I mean, like these things really happen. Our brain sits there and floats a little bit in space with only millimeters of space against your cranium, and so it's important that we take care of that. But this does happen. So we've got Cushing's disease on one side, where cortisol stays chronically elevated. What is that? I mean, that is like the catabolic wasting disease. You lose massive amounts of muscle where you could actually be, and again, like not trying to be disrespectful, you become skinny fat.
Yeah.
Like very thin, but your body fat is very
face,
high.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like as if you were on progesterone.
Right.
Not progesterone, but prednisone.
Yes.
So that basically a catabolic hormone that they're putting in your body as a powerful anti-inflammatory. That's what prednisone does. So you have to be really careful being put on prednisone. I know it can help with inflammation-based issues and rheumatoid, but only symptomatically and temporarily when leading to much bigger issues. And also, it puts you more susceptible for brain-based issues. So you have to be really careful.
And by the way, people like prednisone feels good. So does cortisol. Like you put 100%. Someone on prednisone, they're like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world. I have all this energy. We have a term we use, cortisol junkies, which these were clients that we trained where they were chronically stressed and they gravitated towards the most
intensity circuits,
intense workouts. And they would say, I feel good doing them though. And it's like, you just pushed your cortisol a little higher.
Always hard convincing that client they're doing the wrong thing because they have the feedback.
Get the reward.
I feel better. How could you tell me this is the
wrong thing? In the alarm
thing to do?
stage of stress, you feel amazing.
Yes.
So it's very rare that I see someone in my practice in the alarm stage of stress.
It's after.
It's only after.
It's when
because they feel
all
great.
Fatigued.
Yeah. And so the only people I see during it are those people that are staying ahead on their health.
Yeah.
Like, I feel great, but my friend was doing this. They recommended it. Maybe I should try it as well.
Yeah.
And so if you can get there, even when you feel great, you want to get a baseline. No matter what, like you want a baseline on your health. Plus, if your cortisol levels are elevated in the morning, you actually want to stay away from the high intensity interval training, the cold plunge, the et cetera. Now, those can be beneficial. But not if you have elevated cortisol.
That timing,
because
this is why you told Doug not to do that, right? I remember when we all did that test, you were told out of all of us, your Doug is the one that's not supposed to do the cold plunge, right? For that reason.
He had the elevated cortisol and the elevated evening cortisol multiple times. So we'll talk about that here today. And though you have to actually then give someone a more personalized plan for that. They need to start hours before bed to start to decline and lower that cortisol. Any light will upregulate cortisol and downregulate melatonin. So much more challenging to, they call it sleep latency, how quickly you fall asleep.
How often do you see Band-Aids where people are like elevated cortisol? You mentioned melatonin, which kind of, for lack of a better term, balances it out. But but how many times do you see people in this alarm stage? Oh yeah, I take 5 milligrams of melatonin every night, and it helps, and it's like a Band-Aid, right?
Yes. Well, so melatonin, we can look at it as like that's a natural hormone in the body, powerful antioxidant, powerful anti-cancer, powerful antiviral. So it has benefits on its own, but I don't disagree. Meaning like, so if you have a cup of coffee in the morning, you should have a cup of coffee with some caffeine in it because you enjoy it, not that you need it. If you can't get through the morning without caffeine, then it's a dependency.
Something's wrong.
If you're taking some melatonin at night because you like the benefits you get from it and it gives you a little extra deep sleep, phenomenal. But yes, if you can't fall asleep, that is an issue. Yeah, but like you said, Ambien, Lunesta, over the counter, all sorts of things people are taking. Yeah. And even in the morning, like uppers, they're taking allergy medications that push epinephrine. Like seriously, and they're like, well, I take it because I don't have allergies anymore, but I feel better when I take it. Yeah, you feel better when you take it because you're pushing something that we didn't even talk about yet, which is excitatory neurotransmitters. Yeah. Like you're spiking your epinephrine and dopamine, just like, again, a cold plunge would do. Now, what if we run a neurotransmitter test and they have low levels of dopamine and norepinephrine and this is important, and they don't have chronic fatigue-based issues, right? Because you don't want to push someone's dopamine and norepinephrine and cortisol in the morning if they're still in a recovery phase of healing. Because we actually don't want to push that. They're still healing, which is why they're not producing as much. But if you're just more of like the larger kapha body type, like the endomorph, and you're just not producing a lot of cortisol or epinephrine or dopamine, nothing wrong with stimulating that body in the morning.
I wanted to ask you, because we get a lot of calls for this specifically, and it's always a difficult question to answer for us in terms of, advice. Like, what's your best advice for somebody that works like a graveyard or like a night shift? Yeah. And like, what are the methods that they can apply to kind of balance things in that situation?
It is challenging, and I've gotten the same questions. So, I've worked with firefighters, I've worked with so many individuals. Firefighters is the most difficult because
their schedule flips.
Exactly. Their schedule isn't the same. Their schedule is essentially like 2 or 3 24-hour shifts. And so, and then there's also the trauma. It's like being, it's not the same as being in war, but like you're stimulated, like, oh, am I going to wake up tonight? Am I going to get the call tonight? Yes, I am. It's like, how many times am I going to get the call? Is this going to be a 4-alarm fire that this is going to be the day, or is it just a regular day? So that's a difficult group. Obviously we help them with getting to sleep as best they can, but you can't give them, a high dose of liquid melatonin or anything like that, because they need to be able to wake up, that night. So that one's a challenging one. Now, the shift worker, like the nurses we work with or others, what we need to do is create a separate, which is not ideal, diurnal rhythm or diphasic rhythm. So let's say that they get off at 7 in the morning. Okay, they're probably going to have some food because it's difficult for them to even eat and drink while on shift. So let's say they then go to bed around 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. We need then the same preparation we would do for the evening as we would do in that morning. That has to become their night. Again, not ideal, but that the pineal gland and the part of the hypothalamus is regulated by light. So we need to do the blackout shades, just the salt lamps, the blue light blockers, the calming based protocol, and then still not eating a couple hours before they go to sleep, which is really difficult for shift workers in the morning. And then we need to wake up at the same time each day. So we just try to create that 8 hours there. And then when they wake up, that begins their morning, which is, again, kind of strange, but that's when they do their errands and their routine before going off to work.
All right, so you just flip it completely.
And usually it's when you're first starting out as a nurse or other jobs, police, etc. Once you get some seniority, you typically get normal hours.
And
so you're
hope for that.
You're hopefully best able to deal with that also in your 20s and early 30s. Much more challenging if you're doing that for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the signs that your catabolic hormones are just taking over?
If you're starting to feel poor recovery from workouts, or you're not getting the gains or the adaptations that you think that you should, or you're starting to put on a little bit more belly fat, even though you're working out as hard or even a little bit better, you're sore for longer, decrease in energy, libido. Now, you could just take, like, maybe I am overtraining, but doing this for a little bit too long. Okay, you might take 3 days off or a week off with an unloading week. If you still don't feel better after that, that's a real sign that you're moving more to a catabolic stage. So lower mood, lower energy, lower libido, lower endurance, lower adaptations to exercise.
What's the connection between that and visceral or belly body fat? 'Cause I've heard that higher levels of cortisol, or inappropriate levels of cortisol, I should say, can promote visceral body fat in particular, is connected to visceral body fat and belly fat. So in other words, it could change your fat disposition or where you store body fat. So you tend to store it on your hips, and now suddenly, and you hear this from women, because men are used to storing body fat in our bellies, but you hear this from women, like, I didn't store body fat in my belly ever, and all of a sudden I'm getting belly fat.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And you probably will hear it more from women, and a lot of it has to do with levels of estrogen.
Okay.
So if our cortisol levels go up, oftentimes, and typically cortisol is a glucocorticoid, right? So it raises blood sugar levels. So if you have chronic levels of stress, you can raise blood sugar levels without even eating any carbohydrates.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what a lot of people don't know is like, oh, I don't even eat carbs, or I'm below 50 grams a day, or I don't have any carbs in the morning, but my blood sugar is still 120. It's like, okay, well, if you're that stressed, your body's going to look to the liver, and if not the muscles. Now you're breaking down muscle tissue. You're raising blood sugar levels. You start to increase fat stores. The higher the fat stores of adipose tissue, the elevated levels of estrogen, more elevated levels of estrogen. That elevated level of estrogen is going to then cause you to store more body fat as well. So then it's a vicious cycle, because now as you store more body fat, you produce more estrogen, you're chronically stressed, and the cycle just repeats.
Is it that you produce more estrogen, or is that you're more sensitive to estrogen, or both?
Your estrogen receptors are more sensitive. However, no, you don't necessarily produce more estrogen unless you're being exposed to environmental exogenous forms of estrogen, but your estrogen receptors are, they do go up.
So it's like you just made it much, you made whatever estrogen you have, like you have more estrogen because you have more receptors.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. Yep. Now, what you said about blood sugar is very interesting. I remember years ago I had a client who would monitor his blood sugar carefully, who was pre-diabetic. And I remember we did a workout and we trained really, really hard, too hard. And he tested his blood sugar and it was high. And he's like, this doesn't make any sense. I didn't eat anything. And at the time I didn't understand it either. I said, I don't get what's going on. And I talked to a friend of mine who luckily was in the functional medicine space, which years ago was quite rare. And she said, oh, it was too much stress. His liver dumped a bunch of glycogen.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd ever heard of that. So he could have a nightmare in the middle of the night and get a spike in blood sugar, even though you ate nothing.
Yeah. And if you're wearing continuous glucose monitors, if you try it out, you might actually see that.
Yeah.
And so
or you get an argument and you'll see your blood sugar go up or something.
You will. And so it's funny, and I've shared this story, I think, here before, but it's worth repeating. I've read that in the literature, but I had never seen it.
Yeah.
Like, I literally never seen it. And then I was working with a type 1 diabetic client, and we were trying to get their blood sugar under control in every way, shape, or form, because having dysregulated blood sugar is one of the fastest way to age and end up with chronic-based disease. And you end up with advanced glycation end products, all sorts of different things. So we found, because he only had time to do his workout after work, which if that's all you have, that's all you have.
Sure.
No big deal. And so every time he did a boot camp, every time he did high-intensity interval training, every time he did his boxing, his blood sugar went up and stayed elevated the next morning. The only thing that brought it down was low-intensity cardio. The craziest thing. And he hated low-intensity cardio and didn't want to do that. So we had to play with it and move it around a little bit to try to get it earlier in the day. And that's a big one too, is mismatch workout timing. Yeah. So when you look at this, great studies on this, that now, again, not everybody can do this, but I like to do my strength training mid-afternoon. I'm someone, I had Addison's disease, believe it or not, many years ago. That's kind of how I got into this industry in the first place. Rheumatoid arthritis, Addison's disease, type 2 diabetes, a whole lot of issues. It took me 10 years to recover, but I learned a lot in that process, and that's why I'm here today. But what I found was that now that I'm healthy, I produce a lot of dopamine. I produce a lot of norepinephrine. I produce a lot of cortisol just naturally. And so for me, doing a morning workout is too stimulating. Actually, I feel terrible about 2-3 hours later after. I feel great while I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. If I do a mid-afternoon, what they found is that you get the most benefit from testosterone to cortisol ratio. So by the time you get to mid-afternoon, your cortisol has dropped precipitously. Like, it's really come down. If you start the day, let's say at a 9, before lunch you're at a 3, by dinner, you're at about a 1.5 normally. And so it really comes down. Then before bed, a 0.5. And so one of the biggest issues with your workout is it's spiking cortisol, and cortisol being almost an exact opposition of testosterone. So now testosterone is normally at its highest in the morning, but you can actually give it a boost mid-afternoon through a strength training workout.
When cortisol is low.
When cortisol is low.
With a smart workout.
Also, and I feel great.
I was going to say, it also helps with that afternoon kind of energy slump that some people get.
Yes. Yeah. And plus, it's a great de-stressor. If you're able to do that, it'll sometimes be when I used to be in a gym and different places like that, my clinic, it could be 1 o'clock or so. I don't usually get that opportunity now. Usually it's now end of the day, but still 4 or 5 hours from bed. And it does give me that extra little wave of energy, but not that excitability, manic energy, where your heart rate can't calm down. It's just enough to move through that afternoon lull where a lot of people, they'll reach for another coffee, an energy drink, or, maybe something more stimulating.
What do you now when you're doing these tests throughout the day? Because we did a hormone test with you, and it was 4 saliva tests, I believe. I think you mentioned it was like morning, like first thing when you wake up.
Yes.
Lunch, before dinner,
lunch,
and then
before dinner,
bed.
and then before bed. Testosterone is supposed to be the highest in the morning.
Yes.
So is cortisol. Those start to drop throughout the day. What about the other hormones? What do those look like throughout the day typically?
For men, they're basically going to all be at their peak. So that's the nice thing
in the morning?
in the morning.
Okay.
So that's why in the morning you have 4 tubes of saliva, but the first one is the largest one. And that's because we're collecting all the sex hormones, not just cortisol.
Okay.
Then you get a smaller tube before lunch. You fill it up halfway just with saliva. And then one before dinner, and then one before bed. Any 30 minutes or so before bed, so we can actually look at cortisol.
Okay.
That's to me, if you could only run 2, it'd be first morning, and then it'd be before bed.
Okay.
Now, it's great to see your rhythm because all of you, we can actually see your total cortisol output, which is impossible to do any other way.
Yeah, you can't.
Except through these saliva tubes.
Cool.
Yeah. And now when people are on, because when people are on hormone replacement therapy or hormone optimization through exogenous means, are you obviously it's going to look different? Is it going to look different?
Yeah, we should chat about that because I know you 3 are using testosterone replacement therapy,
Right.
Yeah.
And I've some great research on this as well. It's fascinating, and I think it is now changing the industry. And you all see a great practitioner, so they're doing it now twice a week. Are you doing it? Or are you doing it once a week?
Yeah.
Once.
I do twice.
Twice? Okay.
Yeah.
So what they found was the actual mean, so the elevation of testosterone on day 1 for TRT. So you inject yourself within 24 to 48 hours, it's going to peak.
Yeah.
Right. And so the mean on that, they only do it so conventional medicine just looks at total testosterone. They don't really look at free testosterone too much. A good doctor will look at the free testosterone because that's ultimately what really matters. But it was a 1,011-12. So 1112, I should say, 1,112 was the mean peak in terms of testosterone. Now, by day 6 or 7, it was 400.
Yeah.
With a plus minus of 297. So it's a huge range, right?
Yeah.
Some guys were up to 1,400, 1,500. Some were at 100 to 700.
Yeah.
So it's just this huge range, which is why my recommendation, actually last time, it was a bunch of years ago, but I said if you can, do twice a week,
Divide the
lower
dose.
dosage,
Yeah.
and it will allow you to feel that same benefit all the way through. Now, since then, I've worked with a lot of guys on TRT. It's obviously a lot more popular now, much more prevalent. And what I'll say is this, most guys know right away when their level falls below a certain number.
Yeah, you
Like
feel
without
it.
even testing it, they're like,
Yeah,
oh
you
yeah,
feel it.
I feel it. Mood, strength. I was just talking to a guy, he's 71 years old. He uses TRT. He's like, this is what I use. This is what I've always used. I can tell that every time I go down just by, I think he dropped it by like 30 milligrams, his dosage. I think he went from like 100 to like 75 or 70, somewhere right around there. He's like, yeah, it wasn't right. He's like, it didn't give me what I was looking for.
Yeah.
He's like, when I'm at this number, he's like, that's the perfect amount for me.
I hear some people do now sub-Q injections on a daily basis to keep it as long as possible. I don't know how you would do that with the oil, but that's what some people are doing.
Yeah, I think in the future it's every 2 to 3 days. Now it's a lot more of a pain, right? Literally to do that. Yeah.
That's the only reason why I don't like doing the 2 times a week is because of just having to inject twice a week.
Yeah.
Forever like that. But I know that my levels are like that. It took a while before they could figure out the optimal dose for me because I was crashing hard by day 7.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and you don't want that. I mean, I don't know that it's worse, but it is worse in terms of mood and in terms of, getting in the gym and exercise and sticking with a routine.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as, I think that if you can, you take the dosage down based on what your levels say, but also based on feel, right? Because part of it is how you feel. Part of it is what your numbers look like. That goes for every functional medicine test in the world. It's not just the numbers, it's the symptomatology.
Of course. Yeah.
And then one thing we need to look at is, if you can remember, was this done, this lab test, the day or 2 after an injection, because you're going to be at high levels. And some of you are at really high levels, but now we can talk about that and we can say, okay, based on that, I would say based on that safely, you're going to be around 40 to 50% in 6 or 7 days.
Right.
Like however you want to look at it of that. And that might be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. For each person.
Hey, if you want to get the Sex Hormones and Adrenals test for yourself, click right here. You'll get 50% off. Back to the show. All right, so let's look at our test.
Let's dive right
see
in.
what happened.
All right, so we're going to start with Sal. Sal, yours is the only one we didn't have.
So we don't have a point of reference. We don't have a previous
don't have a
one.
point of reference. So that's why I do always love baseline, but that's okay. We're going to dive right into it. So I'm going to start with DHEA, and then I'll kind of work down to estrogen.
So I supplement with that as well. So DHEA, testosterone.
I was going to ask you because your DHEA is it's high, but it's excellent. It's a 49.
Okay, good.
So how much do you supplement with DHEA?
100 milligrams.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a high dosage as well.
Yeah.
50 to 100 milligrams is typically the dosage we would give. 55, 60 plus, usually divided dosage, if not all in the morning. Are you
All
taking
in the
morning? Okay,
All in the
great.
morning.
So that would mimic, more of nature. So that's what we want. So your DHEA is great. You're a 49.4. If you ever wanted to, you could try doing 50. I always like to tell people you want the lowest possible dose to get the best clinical effect.
Yeah, I started with 50 and I went up to 100 because I felt better on 100.
What did you feel? I'm interested.
More energy and better sleep.
Yeah.
Actually, better sleep.
Yeah.
I noticed.
Okay, that's great. Great to hear. Your testosterone was 1513. So it was higher than you were the high number in the group.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Obviously.
Not surprised.
Yeah. I don't know what it was
before.
baseline, like I said before.
Yeah.
But your levels could be, if it's 1513, may also be 700, 800
By the end of the week.
By the end of the week.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this is free testosterone.
Okay.
So
Could be accidentally drawing a little bit more than what.
So what I'm saying is you probably feel phenomenal. We'll put it that way. Your progesterone was pretty normal. It was 158. And your estrogen is only 2.8. Now, is it higher than the 1.6 we like to see? Yes. But at this number for testosterone,
It should be higher.
it should be an 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be like 3 times. So you are, unless you're taking something, you are not converting testosterone to
Interesting.
estrogen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Too masculine.
No moves.
well, it's
I'll hang out
it's a
with
good
estrogen-
thing.
with
You
the-
do
yeah.
want estrogen. It's actually it's preservative for
hang out with animal,
anti-aging,
it'll help.
but you just don't want a lot because it can cause obviously gynecomastia and all sorts of other issues. All right, so let's check out your cortisol levels now. Unless you have any questions on the others. Okay.
No.
So what do we want in the morning? We said 6 to 9 basically is our number. You were a 7.8 nanograms per milliliter.
Oh, good.
At noon, you were right on the cusp. We want 2 to 3 or 3.1 technically. You were 3.2, so that's great. Nothing to change there. Evening, you were higher than we want. We want up to a 2. Again, only 2.1, but we want to start to come
Slightly
down.
high.
And then before bed, not out of range, which is above a 0.9, but we wanted a 0.6 or less, and you were a 0.8.
Okay.
So
So,
just
a little
slightly.
high in the evening.
Yeah, but really great levels.
Okay,
I mean, there's
good.
really no issue there. And then total cortisol, we talked about before, we want that between 9 and 13 units for the day. And you were a 13.9. So just out of the zone.
Okay.
And so what I would say is this this is pretty balanced.
Okay.
The testosterone, if I was your doctor, I would say, let's see if we can go a little lower.
You can back off a little bit.
For only because I want you to stay on this and the right dosage for you for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, what's the right dosage? You're gonna have to just play with that and find out what's right for you. But this is great.
think he
These are
knows
good
that.
levels. And so work a little bit more. What's your deep sleep and REM sleep look like?
I don't know.
Okay.
I
So you don't track that?
I don't track it, no.
I would track that. That's that next evolution of what I would say to a client, what do you want to do now? All right, if you're optimizing nutrition and exercise and healthy biohacking and all of those things, let's start to look at your sleep.
Okay.
It's probably the number one thing for aging as we start to.
I sleep okay. It's not bad. I can have bad sleep sometimes, but usually I'm okay.
Are you using your?
I use CPAP now, and it made a big difference. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you had to use the CPAP?
Well, I probably had to have used it longer than I have, but it's been maybe at least 3-4 months now that I've had it.
Okay. And that's probably given you a lot of benefit in terms of sleep.
Definitely.
Okay, good. So we'll look at that. Aura Whoop. I don't know if you guys work with any companies as well, but
We don't.
We use Aura though.
yeah, I would definitely check that out. Aura is the best for sleep. In my
Normally,
opinion.
I have mine. I didn't wear mine this time around, so it'll be interesting. But I will after this.
Yeah.
And then don't go by any one night. Look at a
course.
month. Of aggregated data, what's my typical deep, my typical REM. You want to shoot for 90 minutes or more of deep, and then 2 hours or more of REM.
Okay.
And just on a consistent basis, trying to get in bed, stay in bed. If you're training, if you can be in bed for 8.5 hours and get 8 hours of sleep, that's ideal.
Yeah.
If you find yourself waking a lot between 1 and 3 in the morning or 2 and 4 in the morning, it can be dysregulated cortisol as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
That'll happen sometimes.
All right. Good results. Justin's up next. All right. So Justin, previous DHEA was 12.4. Previous testosterone was 163. Previous progesterone, 24. Previous estradiol, 1.9. All of those were, perfect. They were great numbers. You had just started TRT
Yeah,
when we
just
did this
started
lab.
then, yeah.
And so those were like ideal numbers. Testosterone or DHEA now is an 8.1. No issues with that. So
Okay.
optimal is between 6 and 18. Do you take any DHEA or anything?
I don't supplement with that. Yeah.
At 8.1, you could start to think about it. You wouldn't. So we actually start out with just 5 milligrams twice a day. You can start with 10. You can start with a little bit more if you wanted to, but we don't really need to get you above a 20, 25. So not a lot more that would move the needle. Now, your testosterone this time was a lot higher. It was 826. And I don't think you said you've changed your dosage, right?
No, I haven't.
So I'm assuming that what we got
Just a
was
day.
your day or two
Yeah.
after
Oh
your
yeah,
injection.
it's closer probably to
Yep.
the injection.
And then it will fall to maybe 200, by
Okay.
the end of the week.
Yeah.
Maybe not that low. That would be a big drop. So I wonder if as well, because these tests are really accurate. I mean, these are very accurate tests, especially when you're looking at free testosterone, is that if your body is utilizing this testosterone, the receptors are stronger for testosterone now than they were before. Maybe before you were converting more to DHT, which this test isn't measuring, or something like that. It's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And DHT it's an anabolic hormone. It's not that it's not good in terms of exercise and gains and all of that, but it can have some detrimental side effects for prostate inflammation, hair loss, et cetera. So
Doesn't DHT also lower estrogen?
only if testosterone is moving to DHT instead of converted to estrogen.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because it can go one of two pathways.
Okay.
So those are the main ones. And by the way, now that I'm kind of like running my mind around it, I'll have to look back on the research on this. So you get me thinking. I do actually believe that your body can endogenously produce higher levels of estrogen from adipose tissue. So I want to go back and look at that.
Oh yeah.
Because for men, you're looking at a conversion from hormone production to estrogen, but for women, they're looking for estrogen production from the ovaries. So I actually want to look to see if the adipose tissue does that.
I was fatter back then, so
Well, your
nah.
your estrogen your estrogen is at 3.6 now.
ooh, that sounds high.
It's high, so I would actually start to use indole 3-carbinol and DIM, so diindole methane. So those two, which are in cruciferous vegetables, help to block that and get it out of your
More
body
broccoli.
faster.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would use that.
Yeah. So don't touch me.
Estrogen balance, that'll be helpful. But if you look at the ratio, so you didn't even double your estrogen, but you quadrupled your testosterone number. So meaning like it's not that the estrogen's
Nice.
That'd be pretty good. Then,
That
yeah.
sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Let's look at those cortisol numbers. So from
here
before,
we go.
cortisol was 7.6 in the morning. Excellent. High at noon at 3.8. High in the evening at 3.4. And then back down to 0.8 at night. So not bad at night. Again,
okay.
would like it
Just when
0.6.
he's
Down at night.
Yeah, just in the
around
afternoon
these
hours.
You just stress them the fuck out.
Only was around us.
Good Lord.
Do you drink a fair amount of caffeine?
I do. Yeah.
So that's probably the caffeine, and then the caffeine wears off, which is a 6-hour half-life of that.
So that's a caffeine.
that's
You're
probably
going to be similar, I
All
bet, on
all
that then.
That explains it.
But your cortisol now, I believe, let me just make sure. Yeah,
Oh, that
this
was
is you.
before?
That was previous.
Okay.
Yep. So now it is a 7 in the morning, so optimal. Still high around noon. It's at 6, so that's a big one. So
Caffeine.
that's going to be the caffeine.
Yep.
And then in the evening, it drops down to low, believe it or not, at 0.4, and then optimal before bed. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, those look good.
Nice
Crushing
job,
it.
dude, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Looks good.
I'm not
That yoga
stopping
class?
caffeine.
It's all the yoga.
Is that yoga class? Is that you been taking or what?
Yeah, just trying to be chill, you know?
That's a good thing. All right, Adam's up next. Let's see.
Did you save Doug for last because he won? Is that why?
There's no winner in this one.
okay.
Everybody's a winner.
If there
right?
was,
Everyone's a winner.
Everyone's a winner. Okay.
Whiz I did.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah, if the goal was
Well, Sal definitely
if
won
the
the
guy, I was
testosterone.
going to say if
Yes.
the goal was the highest testosterone,
That's
then
right.
you won.
Then
Yeah, killing it.
then Sal's
Don't make
killing
me
it.
mad.
That's right. All right, so let's see.
Talk to me. Where are we at?
Your testosterone last time was a 233.
Okay.
And that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that was actually before you moved to the twice a week, but I'm not sure. It might have already moved to twice a week.
I don't remember. I know I played with that for a little bit, and I'm not there. I'm once a week right now, just
Okay.
because I've been. And it's harder for me to consistently remember to go twice a week. I don't like doing it. So.
Oh, so you don't take it home?
Yeah.
You
No, I do take it at home, but
okay.
I mean, I'm not consistent when I have to go twice. I'm good if it's once a week. Once a week, it's easy.
Yes,
I start
yes.
the week out every week. I do it. But if I have to remember to do it again,
You should take it here. Let us give it to you. We'll remember.
But that's good. That's good. We're
Okay. But then the number's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, it really
I felt
is.
like it's been about, I want to say a good 2 years now where I felt like I've really honed in on where I was telling, I don't know if you were in here or not, when this is the best I've ever been to, of not even having to take Arimidex, which was what I used to have to do to keep the estrogen at bay. Typically my estrogen would shoot up, but I haven't had to mess with the Arimidex in a long time, which has made me really happy that I found that kind of balance.
How would it affect you? Because your lab doesn't show that. That's why obviously your symptoms matter.
Gynecomastia. So I'm very sensitive to it. If I ever,
could it be progesterone related? Because can't gynecomastia be related to progesterone as well?
Mainly estrogen.
Anytime, so 2 ways I would notice. Anytime I would kind of slightly up my dose, even the slightest bit, I would notice. Or if I'm actually not training. So if I would keep my normal TRT dose and then not be lifting weights, I could notice it start to kick up. If I kept my TRT dose where it's supposed to be and I'm strength training at least 2 to 3 times a week, I've been perfect. So
it is good. I'm telling you, like, there is some genetic variability with all of this, and to start to dial in what works for you is just of the utmost importance, without a doubt. Well, I can tell you that we can just kind of jump back and forth for yours. Your testosterone is 224 this time, so it's exactly the same.
Okay,
I mean, which is uncanny.
I've been very consistent with my dosage.
Estrogen before was 1.4, so it was higher, but normal range.
Okay,
and now it's 0.7, so it's great. Good. Yeah, like you don't even need to take an estrogen support or what you're taking now. But if you feel you're prone to it, there's nothing wrong with taking that to just keep it at bay. If you feel like you're someone,
so I typically what I do, and I haven't really had to do this in a long time, but if I start to feel the sensitivity come up, I'll take it, and then it'll go away, and then I don't worry about it until then. I don't ever let it completely start to form like I would in the past, because not knowing how to control it. Where now I wait to feel that, and only take it if I start to feel it coming on. And I haven't in a long time. So it's been good.
Very good. DHEA has come down a bit. It was 39 before, and it is 4.6 now.
So I don't supplement at all. What would you recommend I take?
I would probably do 10 milligrams twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just start at just 10 milligrams in the morning.
Okay.
Make sure there's no aromatase where it's starting to cause maybe some tingling, or is that what you typically feel?
Yep. Yeah. It starts with that before it starts to do anything.
Yeah, around the nipple area. And then if you don't have that, then you can add the other 10. Okay. Now it shouldn't, because remember, DHEA can move to wherever it wants in the steroidal hormone pathway. It can help to balance cortisol, can end up with testosterone, then testosterone converted to estrogen, or DHT.
Okay.
And you might want to just use, again, it's just I3C and DIM. 2 extracts from broccoli, great product, and it will block some of the estrogen.
Okay.
It's not a bad product.
You guys create that? You guys have that?
Yeah, it's called estrogen support.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, let's take a look at your cortisol levels. Progesterone was totally normal. It was 55 before. Now it's 21 now. Both are totally normal for guys. Cortisol before was high. It was 17.4 in the morning, so it shouldn't be above a 9.
Okay.
It was borderline. It was 3 at lunch, 3.3 in the evening, so it's a 1.5 too high, and then 0.8 at night. So it did come down a little bit before bed, which was good. Now, perfect. 6.3 in the morning, 1.7 at noon, 0.8 in the evening, and then 0.5 at night.
Yeah.
So that's excellent. Really great.
What were we so stressed out about before?
There was something going on there. There's something going on. That's for
slacking off a while back. That's what it was.
Because that's not when it's first in the morning. That's not caffeine. Yeah, that is.
So we're all good.
What are you talking about?
That's the cortisol awakening response. That's not.
I'm with like Justin. I'm pretty high on caffeine in the morning time. So,
but that's before you even had caffeine. That was upon waking.
Oh,
so when you look at that, the previous one is what I'm saying. It's great now.
Yeah.
And some people are slow and fast metabolizers of caffeine as well. So, but it also depends on the dosage. There's 200 milligrams, and there's 600 milligrams, and there's
there's a one. Once I started to get to 600, so 400 seems to be very good for me. Like 400 and early in the day, I feel great. I start flirting with 600 and start pushing it closer to noon. It starts to disrupt sleep. Definitely have connected that.
If you check your heart rate too, you really don't want it to rise more than like 3 beats to maybe 5 at rest. So if you have a caffeinated beverage, this goes for food sensitivities, which I know we're going to talk about in the future. If your heart rate goes up, you are having a reaction to that, and you're definitely sympathetic nervous system tone. So it's a good thing just to look at. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. If you click right here, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra. Back to the show.
All right, Doug is up. Last but not least, previous testosterone was a 42. Previous DHEA was 7.9. DHEA borderline. Testosterone obviously too low, right? What is it now? 121 for testosterone. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Boy, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll get to your cortisol, but like you've done you had a big turnaround from your cortisol numbers and your
good.
testosterone. So I'll just go through them. Your testosterone was 42, which, even at 70 plus, we don't want it at 42.
Yeah.
So it means there's just a great stressor. And then Doug previously, cortisol was 9.4, 6.4, 1.9, and 1.5 at night. So it was essentially double the amount of cortisol that you would want to produce for the day. I can just do quick math on this, 10, 16, 18, 19 and a half, call it 20. Yeah, just about double at the max what you would want to produce. Now, testosterone is 121, which is great, honestly, for any age for testosterone. Progesterone is 31, estradiol only 0.8, DHEA 6. So, we can play with that DHEA a little bit, but it's not bad. It's just borderline. Cortisol, though, had the biggest change. It went from 9.4, 6.4 to 6.8, 2.6, 1.1, and 0.6 at night. Total cortisol 11. So you cut your cortisol basically in half.
Good for you.
It's great.
He just cares less.
I know
that
that's been an area I know you've been really trying to.
I've been working on my sleep a lot. I track it, and I've done a lot better. Yeah.
That will change. We didn't actually talk about that, but sleep will change your testosterone faster than almost anything.
Yeah.
If you're not getting good sleep and it's disrupted and it's not restorative, it's going to affect your progesterone levels. It's going to lower them, and it's going to lower your testosterone and DHA as well. So that's why really dialing in the sleep, making sure that you're getting not just enough hours, but restorative sleep of deep sleep and REM sleep really do matter.
Yeah. I know it was in competition, but I do kind of feel like Doug and I kind of won this one, don't you?
I think so.
You feel like that? I feel like that.
Like
I'll
I said,
take it.
everybody's here a winner. That's for sure. Great testosterone. levels.
That's good. That was good, though, huh? That was a good one.
Not bad.
Probably one of our better balances, I'd say.
No, I think most of your numbers, especially cortisol, have improved over the last couple of years. I know you've been using, magnesium and different things like that to help to turn off that sympathetic nervous system at night. All of that comes kind of with just dialing in the lifestyle that you guys have been talking about and finding out what really works for your body.
Now, typically when you do these and you have a client who did a test like this, when you look at these numbers and there's some that are off, you have protocols.
Yes.
You see like, okay, this is out of whack here. This is out of balance there. It's like a window into the right protocol for that individual to help. And it's through measuring the hormones. Now, how often I should say, do you test the hormones after you start implementing certain protocols?
Yeah. So let's say a female has estrogen dominance, so lower progesterone levels. They might even show higher testosterone because of stress. Or a male's showing lower testosterone, lower DHEA, higher elevated cortisol at night. That's the most typical profiles that we see. We are going to put someone on a 12-week protocol to maybe 16 weeks, and then we're going to lab test at that 12 to 16 weeks. Now, we're going to use things like magnesium that we talked about before, especially in the evening. We'll use B complex or activated Bs during the day. We'll use omega-3s, which help to balance the hormones and inflammation. We'll use a product called Adrenal Soothe, which has ashwagandha, L-theanine, phosphoserine that starts to quiet cortisol in the evening. And maybe we'll use some liquid melatonin at night, which is a little bit different because it's in and out of your system faster, so you're not groggy the next day. For women or for guys with higher estrogen, we'll use estrogen support, which is that I3C and DIM. Again, these are all natural, supplements and ingredients. And then what we'll want to do, though, this is really important, and we can use DHEA if we need to, but don't always need to in younger clients. What we want to do is we want to test these levels while still on the supplements. And that's what a lot of people don't do. They stop them, and then they're getting not their baseline. Now, you've been on these for 12 weeks to 16 weeks. Test where you're at. If everything is balanced, amazing. Then we're going to use a specific protocol as well to titrate you down. So we're very going to slowly to figure out, maybe using 6 products. All right, we're going to start with what first? Maybe we start to remove the liquid melatonin first. And we're just using the magnesium, the Adrenal Soothe, right? So then what do? Well, instead of taking 2.5 milligrams a night, not a big dosage, we'll take it to 1.5 or 1.25. And we'll do that for a week. Did it change your sleep? No. Great. Let's go to 0.5 milligram. Change your sleep? No. And then after 0.5 milligram, we can just remove it the next week. So it's typically over 2 to 3 weeks that you slowly come off a supplement, and it allows you to see if there's a rebound effect. And if there's a rebound effect, it means your body just needs that for a little bit longer. But it's not just supplementation; it's also the lifestyle, right? I mean, it's like people. If you're going to do a workout and it's within an hour or two of bed, it might just be too stimulated. Some people can do a sauna an hour before bed, and it actually helps their sleep. Other people, it's detrimental to their sleep. A lot of people like red light 60 minutes before bed because it's longer wavelengths, less energy, like than blue light. So it can actually help to reset that circadian rhythm as well. So that could be a nice thing to do.
I feel that.
So
I feel
you
that
add these things in, and it's the whole de-stress protocol. And so every time someone runs this lab, you get that whole protocol personalized for you. That's what I believe the future really of health and medicine is being able to run these labs.
Totally.
Awesome.
So
well,
cool.
that's great. I feel like this is one of the more fundamental tests that people should do.
This is one that is probably our maybe like second or third most popular lab. We run tens of thousands of just this lab a year, and it's with people literally all over the world. And it can be game changing because the goal is to find something before it goes wrong. But if not, at least, okay, now you see what's going on between your hormones and you're able to fix that. So yeah, I appreciate you.
Little off topic, and we can cut this if you want to talk about it on here, but I'm just curious because what's so cool, you have thousands and thousands of people, you got to have so much great data on all this. Are you using AI at all to support what you guys are doing as far as protocols? And I would think having that now, you could really quickly solve a lot of problems and get right to a protocol. Are you using it at all? Are you messing with that at all?
Yeah, so we built this about 18 months ago. Like you said, we have over 500,000 labs, over 500,000 labs, over 1 million to 1.5 million data points. And it's actually well over that. It's probably around 10 million data points. And then we have all the people and their healing-based process. Yeah. So what you're able to do, because a lot of people worried about their data, and this is the nice thing about these labs, it's not shared with anybody. So we use all third-party lab testing, which you should always do as a practitioner. If you own the lab company, it's a little sketchy there.
Of course.
Right? So you always keep that separate.
Our supplements fixed everything.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So you want independent research and data, CLIA certified labs, and then you have your practitioner, and then there's you. If you want to share this with your PCP or insurance or whatever, feel free. Sure. But people like it private. Now, what we can do is on a HIPAA compliant level, you can anonymize all this data.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing. So all you see is numbers.
Yeah.
And then what we now do, and you'll see our labs actually look different than they have before. So we've created our own API. We have all new structured data. I like to geek out on this stuff all the time. And I've got a couple scientists on my team that love to do this as well. We've now made it super easy to read for a client. It summarizes exactly what your data points mean just based on your numbers. So no humans doing that. And then it gives you a protocol based on how others got well based on your numbers.
Oh,
so
cool.
it's unbelievable.
So sick.
Now,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
the nice thing is you then, again, doesn't take into account though the symptoms really. So I still believe there should be a human.
Sure.
So a human then goes through this and says, oh yeah, but based on Sal or Justin or Adam or Doug, that we need to take out this one and add this instead.
Right.
So that's how I believe that human and AI will work best in the future is our practitioners can't forget anything because it's already there.
Yeah.
It's based on all of the teachings that I've done before.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I love this stuff.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I feel like there's a future in the business to where people can almost do it themselves, but then only if I am running into problems or I notice other symptoms, maybe I call your team and I'm like, okay, I'm following the protocol as it's laid out, but I noticed this and feel this. And then that's where the real person comes in. But I bet AI would be able to help a good percentage of people just because you have so many data points.
So, and we do use that now and people are able to get their labs if they need to on their own, but do a 30-minute call with a practitioner. That's like our team, their average industry experience is over a decade. Yeah. So, I mean, they just have so many hours. They've got that 10,000 hours. Yeah. And you really want that. Unfortunate story the other day, someone wrote in on the minerals and metals test and they looked at their heavy metals and they were a practitioner. They weren't trained through IHP, which, we try to train people to be able to read all of these labs, but they're a doctor. And so we give them access to all of these labs. We sign off on it. We have a medical director and a medical doctor in every single state. And here's the problem. They look at just the graph and they saw that mercury was elevated and aluminum was elevated. That's not uncommon. We're exposed to all of these things in the environment. The problem is they looked at 5 different tests and the graphs looks very similar. Well, the problem is there's no upper limit on heavy metals. So the graph goes from, like, we'll call it a 1 is high for aluminum to infinity. And so where do you graph it? Well, you have to graph it like halfway, somewhere between 1 and infinity. Now we're going to change this in the future, but they didn't interpret it correctly because they didn't look at the numbers on the bottom. All the numbers for all of their clients were different. Right. All they looked at was the graph. Oh, okay. So that's why having a qualified person read this lab, it's worth it. Yeah. Plus, it comes with all of these labs. Yes. So that's the nice thing is you might as well just take advantage of it. We already include that with all the lab testing.
Well, very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my team, we've done this before, but it's half off for your community. So that is something that we'd love to be able to bring you. So it's literally 50% off. That still includes the consultation. And that's at StephenCabral.com/hormones test. If people want to pick up their own lab, definitely recommend they do so.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sweet.
appreciate it.
Do it.
All right, I know you liked that episode. If you did, check this one out. 30% body fat. For men, this is way too high. This is actually a bit high for women as well. So in today's episode, we're talking about how you can go from 30 to 10. What is 10% body fat? This is when you have a visible six-pack. Can you go from 30 to 10%? Yes, it's possible, but not if you guess along the way. So we're going to talk about how you can do that in today's episode.
Now, there's a huge range, right, of like body types.
Yes.
Some people can run a little bit heavier or a little bit higher body.